but you can look at his website. He is a spoken word poet, a musician, an author. I know I have a book that came out within the last year, April, and you've got another one on the way.
Yes.
And we have asked him here this morning to talk about spoken word poetry and how that heals the soul in honor of our wellness meeting this morning.
Okay. All right. Let me go down here to the other end of the table. There you go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That's good. That's good. So, I've been here at Cook County for 29 years now.
Great.
Yes, I started March 1st, 1993, and I began my career here at Oak Forest Hospital. Now, before I started my career here, I was doing motivational speaking. I was a hip-hop artist at that time. When I was younger, I was a rapper when I was younger. But I've always been a poet, and I've always been a writer, and I've always written about my situations and circumstances. And God has blessed me so much that now I have traveled the world. I just got back from the Dominican Republic Saturday. And just this year, I've been to Panama, I've been to Jamaica, I've been to the Dominican Republic, and I've been to Mexico, all sharing my words of enlightenment, encouragement, arts, and entertainment. So today, I want to just share with you a couple of things with my experiences poetically, and also as a clerk on the 6th floor, what I experience when patients' health is starting to fail them, family members are coming in. I am the gatekeeper. I'm the first person that people see when they come on the unit. I'm the first voice that people hear when they call on the phone. So the clerk's job is very important and instrumental as to how this facility is viewed when they're talking about Stroger, Cook County. But let me do what I do best first. This is called Hero. Today my son was asked a question by his teacher to draw a picture of his hero. And after thinking for a moment about who made the most De Niro, he drew a picture of me in a mirror. Came home and he posted it on the refrigerator door. And when I saw it, Nancy, it touched me to the core. I was outdone. There's nothing more that a father wants to hear than admirations from his son. So that night as I tucked him in, I wanted to be crystal clear, so I sincerely whispered in his ear, "Son, I love you." And yawning with his hands in front of his mouth, he said, "Daddy, I love you too." As he laid in front of me, I was touched. It was like a needle had stuck me in my arm and my blood was right in front of me, so I thought to myself, I wonder, does he really know for me what he has done? And Mike, does he know that I never could have been a father until he made me one? And that until he was born, I never really knew me. And that I didn't know a thing about responsibility until he gave it to me. And that until he was born, my future was kind of dim. And now that he's here, my life has been extended because even when I'm gone, I can live through him. And although me and his mother doesn't get along, but that leaving him and his little brother in the house overnight was dead wrong, yet he was strong enough to take the time out to take care of his little brother. It's just a shame that at 11 years old, he had to play the role as the man of his mom's house. Yet with all these distractions, he struggled to keep his eyes on the prize when dealing with the everyday life of living in a low-income high-rise, not to mention dealing with his mother's addiction to drugs. But I swore on my life that he would never be a statistic or listed as a thug. So when he would come home with me on the weekend, I would help to build his self-esteem. I allowed him to dream and taught him just what it meant to be a strong black king, and kept him away from all hurt, harm, and danger. And told my son that he could be successful living in a low-income home if Jesus was born in a manger. But there was like this deep-rooted anger that reflected in his attitude, which caused some of his teachers to call me at home from school, but they ain't got a clue as to what he's going through now. And until he found a way to channel his anger, it just kept on slowing him down. But I'm proud to announce that he finally got it under control. Not only did he win first place in a school science project, but for the first time in his life, my little 11-year-old made the honor roll. So when I think about all the obstacles, the peer pressure from the other children, all the slanging and banging that he sees in front of his mother's building, the drug problems dealing with his mother, playing the role as the man of his mom's house and taking care of his little brother. See, when I think about how far he has come, and despite all the obstacles, everything that he has achieved and done, my son may consider me to be his hero. But to me, my hero was my son. That's that poem, y'all. Y'all can clap now, give it up, man. Give me some energy now. So this is not going to be a quiet experience this morning. That poem, can you hear me? That Kleenex? That poem that I wrote about my son, which was my firstborn, and Lisa knows my story and my journey. At 13, he was diagnosed with cancer, osteosarcoma. And you heard me mention about the drug problems that he had. Well, not he had, his mother had. And so there was a little custody situation where I was trying to get my son. I was trying to go through the courts, but it's like going through hell and hot water for a father trying to get custody of his children when they can't really have solid proof that the mother is not capable. So she had another child, and that child was born with crack inside of his system. And so that put her on the radar and alerted the authorities that she does drugs, right? So they would come in and they would test her every so often to see if there were drugs in her system. Well, there's one time they tested her and they saw that drugs were in her system. Now, all this stuff I don't know at the time, right? I just know that I'm taking care of my son, anything that he needs, anything that she asks for, financially I'm providing for him in addition to whatever I'm doing on my own. She would call and say that she was behind on her rent and I would help give her money to pay for her rent. Come to find out she was in a subsidized living situation where your rent was paid based on your income. So if you didn't have any income, you didn't pay any rent. But I was giving her rent money, not even knowing that she was using the money for other purposes, right? So I got a call from social services one day out of the blue, said, Mr. Hawthorne, come and get your son. I'm like, what? What's going on? So apparently they went in, they found that she had drugs in her system, and they were ready to take the children away. And they knew that I had been actively involved in my son's life. That's how I got custody, pretty much, of my son. Shortly after I got custody of my son, he was diagnosed with osteosarcoma. He just started having a leg pain. And we took him to Holy Cross Hospital, talked to Dr. Toussaint. She did an x-ray. She found that there was a tumor in the bone, in the shin of his leg. So she said, take him to University of Chicago, get a biopsy, and we'll see if it's what it looks like. They did the biopsy. They found out that it was cancer. Immediately, they started chemotherapy. He lost his hair, as you guys pretty much have experienced dealing with patients here. He lost his weight. His self-esteem started to fade. And it was a great mental and emotional strain on our whole family, you know. And keep in mind, I'm the only, at that point, active parent. And the burden is on me while working at Oak Forest Hospital. This was 2007, right? Trying to keep a full-time job, trying to take my son back and forth to the hospital, back and forth to testing. And I just thank God, you know, for just being there with me. My mom, she would be at the hospital sometimes where I would go out and try to work. I had to take 2 years off work to take care of my son. This is time that, of course, I would never get back from the job, you know, so I'm behind 2 years pension in my job, but I would never trade in that time that I got to spend with my son his last few years of life, and he did pass away. September the 3rd, 2008, we lost him to osteosarcoma cancer, you know. Of course, that's where it started in the leg, but eventually it spread. After the surgeries of trying to remove the cancer, it began to spread. So when people ask me, what's your motivation? Why are you so nice? Why are you so energetic? Why are you so, nice to people when they come here at the job? And you work here. The attitudes that are here a lot of times from our coworkers are not that pleasant. But also they didn't have the experience that I had, where I had to be at the hospital, where I had to deal with the staff at the hospital, and they could either make my journey at that time a little bit easier or more difficult than what it already was. So I try to make people's journey here a little bit easier. It's difficult when you got to come to the house. No one would be here if they had a choice. But nevertheless, they're here. They're not the only ones that are affected. Their family members are affected. So we have to be a guiding light in a world of darkness. Pallative, to cover, to be a cloak. We have to be a guiding light in a world of darkness. This may mean covering your patients. Everybody don't believe in God, so we understand that. So there's certain principles outside of quote-unquote religion that we can all tap into, right? If you look at that plug on the wall, any plug on the wall, it has two forms, which is the positive, and it has a ground to stop the negative, right? So even if you don't believe in God, you believe in negative and you believe in positive. These are universal things, right? And we have to be grounded, which means we have to be humble, which means that we have to remove our own personal experiences to the side. Yeah, we may have done all the right things. We may have gone to school, played everything by the books, got our degrees, got our certifications, came here and worked, but somebody else didn't have that same opportunity. And now they're here at the hospital. And one part of our mind, we're looking at, why are they in the condition that they're in? What made them start using these drugs? What made them start drinking this alcohol? How did they get in the position that they're in? And we got to fight that urge to judge people when they come here to the job, because everybody's life is not the same. Some people didn't grow up with a father. Some people didn't grow up with a mother. And if they did grow up with a mother or father, depending on what side of town they lived on in Chicago, growing up in poverty and growing up poor and growing up with parents that were addicted to drugs, that really affected the growth and development of that child. So a lot of times people don't get positive words unless they go to school and they're in front of a teacher. A lot of times people don't get told the right things and positive words unless they're standing or sitting or laying in front of you. And so we have to be a guiding light in the world of darkness. The visitors are not as important as the patients, but they are very important as well. And so we have to be able to give them words of positive nature and positive energy so that they can be fueled to go in there and to deal with their loved one and be positive with their loved ones as well. Whether it's on the phone, whether it's in person, this is our duty and this is our responsibility as staff here at Stroger Hospital. We need to give birth to the two twins. Everybody say faith.
Faith.
And everybody say hope.
Hope.
Everyone, including us, are tested, tempted, and tried. Not only just your health, but your health affects everything else. Your bills. When you start getting behind in your bills because you got to be in the hospital, oh my God, mentally and emotionally and spiritually, you are being tested. And so when people act out, they curse you out, they say negative things to you, and we get that all the time with the patients. We can't take it personal because we just don't know what those folks are going through. So for the sake of time, I just wanted to give those words of encouragement to each and every one of you. Again, I am a clerk on 6 East, but I'm more than a clerk. God put me here to be a guiding light in a world of darkness. Having the experience that I have had, I have been weaponized to deal with parents who are losing children. I speak at so many funerals today. I tell people all the time, I don't know how you feel, but I know how it feels to lose a child, to be sitting up in a hospital next to a loved one who is losing their life. So I'm going to close with this poem called Ego that I wrote, and it's based on that loss that I spoke to you about. But it's also based on my own journeys, personal journeys that I've had during my 51 years on this earth, 50 years on this earth. Hey God, where you at? I've been looking for you. Seems like you've been avoiding me or something. And I've been searching for you for years with no answer, just anticipation. And I've been going through this transformation, but every time I call on you, God, it's like I get put on hold. And they say that you hear all and that you see all, but you ain't never available, God, when I call. See, all I remember, it was January 91. I had just left Simeon High School's Martin Luther King ceremony speaking. I wasn't feeling too well that day. Little did I know that all the while, my appendix had been leaking. And where were you, God? Just what I thought, nowhere to be found. And if it wasn't for my son's mother convincing me to go to St. Bernard's Hospital that night, Black Ice wouldn't be here with you in palliative care right now. And where were you at, God, that morning when I went to work and when I got to 123rd and Kesey, right by the cemetery, this lady ran the light. The last thing I saw was headlights. A 3-car collision that almost took my life, but where were you, God? And where were you at, God, when my mother was stricken with cervical cancer? She's been going to the Kingdom Hall, serving him since before I was born. And we both called on you, God, and you still didn't answer. Come on, man, this is my mother. Tell me, is this how you treat all your sons and your daughters? And where were you at, God, that day my son died? I sat there at the University of Chicago and I watched him come back twice. You could have intervened. You could have saved his life, but where were you, God? And where were you at, God, when, okay, my son, I've heard enough. Now I know that times for you have been rough, but son, where's your faith? Seems like you only seek my face when you need me, for I am a full-time God, my son. Do you really believe in me? Well, if so, then you would know that I am the creator of the heaven and the earth. All that you see from the highest heights of heaven to what you have discovered beneath the earth. See, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God of Moses, Lot, and David. I am the one who made Solomon wise. I put Noah in the ark before the waters could rise. I gave Samson the strength to destroy the Philistines with no eyes. I am that smooth stone that David slung that smote Goliath in the head. The cracks that crumble the walls of Jericho, the same one that rose Lazarus from the dead. I am the blood of the lamb of the doorpost that kept the children of Israel safe from harm. Even the staff in Moses' right arm, and I gave it the power to split the Red Sea in half. Shall I go on? I said, please forgive me, Father. He said, no, son. I already have. But like Jonah, you've been running from your mission. I've been trying to reach you and speak to you for years, but your ego just wouldn't let you listen. When your appendix was spreading poison through your body, I was the voice that spake to your son's mother warning you. And do you remember what you promised me, my son? Yes, Lord, I do. I promise you that if you allow me to make it through, then I'll return my life over to you. But what did you do? You continued to play. So I spoke to you again in the form of a 3-car collision, but I allowed you to walk away that day. And have you ever asked yourself the question why the accident was by a gravesite? I was showing you that the road that you were traveling on ended at the cemetery if you didn't change your life. But you still didn't listen. And as for your mother's cervical cancer, I am the reason why your mother's cancer is in remission. And I know your son's gone. But his body was sick, so I relieved him of his pain and I called him home. And yet and still I stayed by your side all those moments that you felt alone, yet you still rejected my truth. If you only could have put your ego to the side and listened to all those whom I sent to you. Lord, you mean to tell me what all the while I was waiting to hear from you? You were sending me messages through all those whom I rejected? Yes, my son, this is true. And instead of focusing on the guides, submit to the truth that you find inside. For Satan is the one who subtracts and divides, but my God is the one who adds and multiplies. I'm telling y'all, he opened my eyes. And so to those of you who can't accept the truth, because your ego won't allow you to accept who the truth is coming through, take this as a lesson. Because see, God just ain't using these leaders today, because asking some of these leaders questions is just like asking blind men for directions. But it's the truth that counts. And see, in Lisa, in this case, my ego just wasn't my ego, but my ego was easing God out. E-G-O, ego. Thank you all so much for having me today.
Thank you.
Story and share your story, and your pain really touches me very deeply. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mike, what were your thoughts?
I enjoy spoken word. I always have. Thank you so much for being transparent and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
It's very meaningful.
Thank you so much.
It just reminds me of how much I'm with our patients or their families to again think about what they're going through, and maybe or maybe not they would share in this transparent way. So how can I be present with them and perhaps listen to the things that are not being said?
Mm.
And we were talking yesterday as one of the residents had a patient who, I think as you sort of said, we wouldn't necessarily know all that that person was going through, so how they present themselves to us with their conflict.
Mm-hmm.
How can we both respond and also, so it's that balance of boundary,
Right.
and empathy, and so to be able to explore some of that. So when you were giving that example, I was thinking about that resident yesterday that had sort of shared their experience in the clinic, and it just, so I so very much appreciate the poetry and reflection and vulnerability to just keep
Thank you.
us to be listening.
And we have seen each other so many times. We just never had a chance to, be in front of each other like we are today. So, yeah, I'm thankful for this moment too, just to actually converse with some of you that I haven't conversed with before. And I see you all the time too.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Well, thank you for sharing. Like she had said, vulnerability, we don't know what other people are going through, and that's not just the patients, families, it's everyone. You don't know. Everyone has their story. We don't know what everyone is going through, and it's every interaction that counts. The minute that somebody walks in, who they're greeted by, it doesn't matter who it is, but every interaction counts. And like you said, it'll either make it or break it. And just any patient here is vulnerable, and especially families, because there's that level of uncertainty, when you're coming here.
Yes.
And so, we had the education, but, it just, even though we have that education, it's our responsibility to advocate for the patients, at so many different levels, not just, what we know.
And she brought up something very important. She talked about that uncertainty. That uncertainty is darkness, and us as a whole team, as a whole staff, being a guiding light in that person's personal world of darkness. One conversation may make a big difference in a patient's life or in a family member's life when they have that uncertainty that she spoke about. So, absolutely. And thank you, too, for being here.
The other thing that I think is so beautiful is in the same way that negative energy is contagious, I think positive energy is contagious. So you've been very generous to share your story with us, and now we can have that energy with someone whose story we don't know, and we might never know, but we can kind of play forward in that way because of your generosity and your share with us. And I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. It is very touching. Like they said, when people are acting differently or disrespecting you, we don't know other person's life, what they are going through. Probably you are there as a way of ventilating or listening to the story. So they're just acting upon you. So they think you are the one able to listen to you.
Right.
So they just burst on you.
Right.
So be compassionate whatever circumstances are, and also they say keep your boundary and guide them the best way you can.
Right. And I would say that 2 of the most difficult times of the year for me is the day my son was born on and the day my son passed away. So July 22nd, I always go to the cemetery. We do a balloon release, and it's a very emotional time for me. And depending on what else I'm going through in my life, with that emotion being on top of what I'm already going through, and then having to be here at work, it's really an extra effort to try to maintain being the person that I am every day, that positive, energetic person. And then, like I said, the day that he passed away on, these are 2 dates that you would never forget. And so dates are very important to people, time, situations, and circumstances. And so just like you said, those boundaries, allowing people to let you in as much as they are able to at that particular time. And then using the information, the personal information that they have given you, and internalizing that, showing that empathy that you spoke about, and that understanding, and using that as your platform in order to build on, giving them that positive energy back to them. Yep.